Microsoft Office Hours Community. June 11th, 2020. We are so happy to have you here with us. We are missing our super co-host, Dave Perlman. We are hoping that he is enjoying his vacation time, but we are here in his stead because this is an amazing call. So I am Heather Cox, and with me today as my guest co-host is
Deb McLennan from Sunyoniana.
Thank you so much, Deb, for being here. I am very proud of Dave for allowing us two ladies to run the show here today. And we are very excited to have with us Chris Krackeler. And he is going to give us a little introduction to himself and to his company. He is here today from Blackbaud. And so, Chris, why don't you start us off by just telling us who is Blackbaud? Because it's possible many people haven't heard of the company before, and what do you do for them?
Sure. Hey Heather and Deb, thanks for having me on the show. I'm Chris Krackeler. I'm the president and general manager of Higher Ed Solutions at Blackbaud. I've got some slides here, not to talk at you, but just kind of underscore, who I am and what we do. Blackbaud has our roots in advancement. And, of course, in higher education today, we work across many other disciplines, from academics to scholarship management to marketing to alumni relations to finance and operations. So there's a lot of different ways that we can impact the work that higher education does.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And I love that you are the father of young twins. When you say young, how young are we talking?
They're 8. Some days they're going on 17, and other days they're going on 6 or 7. Yeah. So it's a full bag.
That is fantastic. So tell us, really dive in for us. Tell us more about Blackbaud itself.
Yeah. So Blackbaud is the leading cloud company in the world powering social good. So we've got software, services, expertise, data expertise, and analytics to help organizations make a positive impact in the world. You might ask, okay, what is that really? So we'll work on the higher ed side with community colleges, small liberal arts schools, all the way up to the biggest public and private institutions in the country.
That's fantastic. Yeah, love that. And you're talking about higher ed. You're talking about all the different things around higher ed. So what is the role of advancement that's in higher education for Blackbaud?
Yeah, that's a great question. When people hear advancement, they think the first thing that comes to mind is fundraising and raising money. And it's true, that's what advancement does, but it can be so much more than that. The advancement department provides a key link between the university and thousands, or in some cases, like with Ohio State, your alma mater, hundreds of thousands of alumni and supporters. And so that advancement department is creating loyalty, cultivating interest, and sometimes it manifests in asking alumni to give money, but other times it's about engagement or volunteering back time and expertise.
Yeah, see, I'm all about. I'll be a little honest. I might skip those calls when they call me for they have the poor students that are working in the center, and they call the alumni. I may have skipped a call or two about that one, but yeah, that's really incredible. So universities, there's a lot going on. We all know there's a lot going on. The whole world is kind of turned upside down right now, but specifically in reference to COVID. Okay, COVID-19. So how are universities responding to it? What are you seeing?
There are a number of things we're seeing, a number of trends. So a few themes, but a lot of universities doing things differently. Mm-hmm. So real quickly, of course, there's the shift to virtual, right? And we saw that right away with schools needing to transition to virtual learning. And Jamie Harper, who runs higher education for Microsoft, mentioned usage of Teams. The platform was up 700% right away, probably much more than that. There's been the shift to virtual commencements, virtual alumni weekends, all of that. You mentioned hey, sometimes the students, they call me and they're looking for money. So even that work has been shifted to virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And so a client of ours, DePaul University in Indiana, of course, they would have a traditional call center that students would call from. They used one of our solutions to shift to do that remotely, and then to layer in more multi-channel and automated touch points. But they also shifted from, oh, let's call Heather and ask for money, to let's have it be more about engagement and stewardship. Let's call Heather. Let's ask her how she's doing. Let's tell her how we're doing and how the university is getting by and what's going on here. And let's, hear from her and look for that connection point.
Yeah. And I even think to that point, like maybe some alumni are feeling it almost differently now, knowing that these students aren't potentially getting that same experience that we did have. And you might even be more likely to get things. Now, that second point you've got there really intrigues me, that innovation in engagement, because, with the shift to virtual environments, not everybody's like really in tune with how that innovation and engagement works. So kind of elaborate on that for us.
Yeah. So, innovation and engagement, how do you break through and how do you connect? In the case of DePaul, they decided, hey, it was more valuable just to connect with people than to ask for money. But in other cases, we've seen virtual town halls with alumni, where alumni can dial in or log in and really ask tough questions of the university and connect that way. We've seen faculty and researchers and other staff recording videos that either can be emailed out or go on the website. So lots of different ways to get the message across. I think we're seeing a personalized approach, and organizations or institutions looking for really ways to create content and messaging that's personalized and that's not generic, especially in these times, right?
Yeah, and actually, for anybody that doesn't know, and for you, that's a passion of mine, because we're all different. Every kid from K-12 through higher ed, everyone's different. They're learning different ways. Some are thriving in this virtual environment, while others are not. And so that innovation in engagement really has to be very strategic and purposeful. Everything has to be intentional about the way that it's done. And finish it up then with this communicating institutional value that you're seeing.
Yeah, so institutional value is the positive impact that a school can have, not only on its mission and on the students, but on the broader community, either in their area or state or national wide. So just a story, if you'll permit me.
Yeah, of course.
Client of ours, Boston University. And so they announced a capital campaign. They want to raise $1 billion with a B dollars.
Ooh,
and so, and they need people to do that. They also need our software and our analytics, and they wound up raising $1.85 billion.
Oh.
So, wow, that's great. That's going to help Boston University plan and succeed for many, many decades to come. And then, you think institutional, advancement. What do you do with that money? It's not just about buildings and infrastructure on campus. They created 250 new scholarships to help disadvantaged people attend.
That's incredible.
And then they also really doubled down on research that was happening to drive innovation on campus. And so there was a professor in their biomedical engineering department. And he and his wife, unfortunately, had a child that very young developed type 1 diabetes. And so this person started working in his lab on, hey, he came up with a prototype at BU on something that's called an artificial or a bionic pancreas. And it's not an actual organ that goes in you. It's something that will regulate the blood sugar and the insulin of a diabetic. And so it's this breakthrough, like a type 1 diabetic would have to have multiple insulin shots a day and constantly be monitoring blood sugar levels, which is a lot for young kids to do, and a big stressor. And so he was doing this work as part of BU, was getting traction, spun it out, created a company, and now is in the final stages of FDA testing and approval. And this is a device that can help quality of life for literally over 1 million type 1 diabetics. And so you sort of look at advancement being you need the people and the systems, and then you raise the money, and then what are the outcomes? And all of a sudden we've got scholarships, innovation, research, and then quality of life for a big swath of people can be impacted.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that really to me speaks to, we know that there's a lot of not so great things that have been happening during this pandemic, but when you see and hear stories like that, the good that has arisen as a part of it as well, that's when you fall back in love with humanity a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, the question on everybody's mind, it's on my mind with elementary school kids. I'm thinking it. They haven't decided what's happening, but let's talk about universities and colleges. What are your thoughts? What are they doing this fall?
Yeah, that's what everyone wants to know. The first question is, will my kids go back to school? And the next one is what happens with higher ed. So the short answer is most universities will be open for physical learning. Obviously, every university I talk to, first and foremost, looks at health of students, faculty, and staff. The Chronicle of Higher Ed has an ongoing poll on their website, and they're keeping track of what universities report back. The latest is about 68% says they'll be open for physical learning. 8% says virtual. So the Cal State system, CSU, was the first one to announce they were going all virtual. And then the rest in between that, 24, 25% are undecided or considering a hybrid. But again, as of now, and things can change, most are planning to open.
That's interesting. That's really, really interesting. Yeah, I mean, and obviously precautions and I just think I know I've heard a lot about, payment and I'm spending money on this or I'm spending money, and does that look the same? And the University of Michigan there, that's all I saw. My husband is a Michigan fan, so I don't know about that one there. But
how did that happen? OSU and Michigan.
It's rough only in November, we make it through most of the time. But yeah, that's fascinating, that really to hear about that, because I don't know that I had seen that list really, that many were planning to go back. And for those that are still concerned, it's going to be an interesting, I think it's going to be an interesting time for everybody to navigate, and it'll, we're all working through that, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And it sounds cliche, but yeah, it's unprecedented, right?
Yeah.
We're all learning as we go. So.
Yeah, and something I mentioned just kind of briefly when I was talking about things being different, we all know that COVID has had a financial impact pretty much everywhere. So what has the financial impact been in higher education?
We're still figuring that out. There's a lot of wait and see. There's been, by and large, many hiring freezes, but by and large, there have not been mass layoffs in higher ed. And so you see the sector kind of being cautious and preparing, but not necessarily having enough data or being ready to do large scale cutbacks. There's top-down financial concerns they have from, will state funding decrease for big state schools? Will athletics aren't open in the spring and could easily be impacted in the fall. So for schools like OSU and Michigan and lots of others that get money from football and athletics, that's a concern. There's concerns on enrollment, although data so far has by and large showed more positive than negative trends on enrollment for the fall.
That's good.
Said with the asterisk that there's still 3 months.
Yeah, exactly. That's definitely true. Yeah. I have heard those things too, actually. Yeah, as you mentioned, like it or not, athletics brings in a lot of dollars. How does that affect things? So that's an interesting thing to think about. So, okay, let's say they don't have, all the funds. They don't have the athletics to bring it in or other aspects. What's going to happen with fundraising for universities?
Yeah, another big topic that our staff and researchers are looking at closely. So far, again, it's too early to tell. There was an article I read recently inside Higher Ed that 4 in 10 major folks that work in major giving are concerned that large 6 and 7 figure gifts could be down. But of course, the 5 and 10 or so are not sure yet. So there could be opportunities for more individual, $50, $100, $200 annual fund type gifts. And there's some opportunities to do more with peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
And, we've seen some schools like Indiana University of Pennsylvania, one of our clients, first thing they did when coronavirus hit was put up a student relief kind of emergency fund of, click here and give money because we're creating more scholarships and more money for people who's, lost a job they had on campus, or for people whose families were hit unnecessarily hard by the pandemic. So some of that immediate type person-to-person giving, we think, in many cases has been up, and we think that'll be a trend that can offset potential macro headwinds.
Yeah.
But again, we're monitoring closely, and it's not exactly sure how it all will play out.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely, well, it's good to hear though, and as we're kind of wrapping it up before we get into some Q&A, I always like to end things on a little bit of a positive note. So you got to give me something positive. What positives have we seen from all of this?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said something to the effect of resiliency and the generosity of people, right? And you see that sort of strength and kindness in our fabric. One of the stories that I love here, and one of these screenshots is the IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. The other is Captain Tom Moore, and I want to be careful not to say Major Tom from David Bowie's Space Oddity. But Captain Tom was
to Major Tom. There you go. Okay,
got
we got it out of the way.
Yeah. I think our audience is happy I didn't try to sing that, but your voice is better than mine. So Captain Tom, right? He served in the Royal Air Force in the UK. He's turning 100 years old. He creates a personal fundraising page, and he says, "I want to raise money." This is back in March for frontline healthcare workers in the UK. And it goes viral. He just hits at the right time. He's on the BBC. He's on Good Morning America. He's featured a lot of places, and just more and more people are giving. He raised 32 million pounds. That's more than $40 million to provide support for healthcare workers on the front lines.
Wow.
Doing immediate response to coronavirus. And so it's that type of generosity where more than 1.5 million people give to him. Like his original campaign goal was a couple thousand, and then he raised it to 500,000. And it's things like that remind you that the strength and generosity of human nature will help get us through this, I think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that we have to fall back on that, and just with everything, with the pandemic, with all the people that were Microsoft is being very heavily supportive of everything that's going on in communities right now. And we have to come back on that resiliency and that strength and that kindness, and that's going to get us through all of these things. Look at that picture of that gentleman. Yeah. Wow. That is beautiful. Oh my gosh. Wow. I love a good story that goes viral. I'll tell you, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. That is incredible. We've got about 9 minutes left. I haven't seen questions that are popping up in the chat. You're welcome to put them in the chat. You are welcome to put them in the community call, or we can raise those hands and we can come off of mute. And what questions do you have for Chris around the topics that we've discussed today? Anybody? Don't be quiet now. I know you're all tired at the end of a Thursday, but come on, somebody's got to have some kind of question. Nothing? All right. Well, then I'm going to ask a question. So, we talked about fundraising. You mentioned our Captain Tom, not Major Tom. You mentioned our Captain Tom. We talked about fundraising. For folks here on this call, and many of which do work in higher education, do you have any suggestions for how we can get started in, our own schools, whether it is K-12 or whether it is higher education? For example, here in the state of Georgia, there is a 14% cut in funding for K-12 and higher ed. So like, let's say I need to go out and I want to get started. Like, what are some things you think that I could do or that our folks could do to get that moving?
So there's a couple things you can attack it or approach it, I should say, from the fundraising angle or from the advocacy angle. Like, I bet if you Googled,
Wait, if you binged?
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. Don't worry. I won't hold it against you.
If you binged, public school funding in Georgia, I bet there would be petitions that you could sign, try to encourage state and federal legislators to vote against that. There might be other town halls or other functions where you could go. I didn't hear you had Georgia pass that, or is that just being talked about?
What, I got to be 100%. I don't know if it was passed or just being talked about, but I do know that there was a lot of noise on my Facebook feed. So
I think we could go to Bing and get the answer to that, but my guess is it's probably being talked about and hasn't been passed. So there's the advocacy angle. On the fundraising side, if it's your local school or school district, there's so much peer-to-peer fundraising you could do. You could go to our, URL, justgiving.com, and create your own page for Heather and for funding in your area, just the way Captain Tom did. You and I probably aren't going to raise $32 million or $40 million, but
that would be impressive.
You see a lot of that individual fundraising of, this is me, this is what I believe in, and I'm going to put it on Facebook and I'm going to send it to my friends, and things like that can take off. So you and I aren't going to raise enough money to help the University of Georgia necessarily, but we could make a difference with our local schools. Yeah. I think on the higher ed side, it's also that personalized approach. It's the stewardship, it's the staying connected with people that give large sums of money, and, either just connecting as people and keeping that relationship strong, or if necessary, making the ask for a large gift if for whatever reason there was potential hardships that might hit the school or potential cutbacks.
Yeah, what I think would be really awesome, Chris, is, we're kind of talking about all of this before we really know what's happening. So like, these are all like, we're getting the information, we're finding out about it, we're talking about it, we're anticipating. I think it would be really, really cool, a couple months, let's give it some time, let's roll into fall. And I'd be we would love to have you come back and say, like, okay, well, what did we see, and what happened? Like, what were the changes? Right. How did this transition? And, what was Blackbaud's role in some of that as well? And to really just kind of bring that full circle. If, I'm just volunteering, Dave's going to just roll with it because he left me in charge today. So I'm inviting you back in the future here.
I like that. Heather's in charge, and everything's getting up leveled. I totally agree with, here's all the things we thought could happen or might happen. And my guess is some of them will, some won't. And there'll be some other surprises that we had no idea, that we said, I didn't even see that coming. And look at that.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's harder to prepare, but
yeah. And folks, as we kind of wrap it up, I got a totally unrelated, nonsensical question. What's the background you've got there?
So that's Georgetown University. I usually it's my alma mater. I usually just have my bland, boring room. But on the office hours, the first part of the call, I saw there's University of Texas and some other great backgrounds. I got inspired.
Yes, I do. I attempt to switch it up sometimes and pick a theme. Often I'll just leave the background so that Steve's not on the call right now, but Steve likes to make fun of when my picture books go sideways. He gets very bothered by my sideways picture books. But then I got my OCD color-coded books on this side. So I left it simple for us today, but we really appreciated you being here today. After this call, everybody, if you have questions, either drop them probably best to drop them in the community call channel. We can get those over to Chris. We can get some different answers, but We absolutely appreciate everything that you shared with us. Deb, any parting words as my co-host
Thank you so
this
much
week?
for presenting with us today and sharing all that great information. I know our folks will really appreciate that. And there was a lot of support to have you come back in the chat. So,
Oh,
I
good.
think
Thank
that's
you.
good too. So, yeah, Dave's not here. Heather said so. So we'll
I
see
know.
you soon.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's if he's gonna let me roll, I'm gonna make that decision. So
I think it's great. What else are we going to do without Dave being here?
Also, okay, I'm gonna stop the recording and